I've recently returned from a 2-week trip to Mexico, and today I'm going to be telling you about 2 of the excursions that we did while we were there. I'd looked at Mexico excursions before we went away, and I'd quickly decided that I wanted to visit the Sian Ka'an Biosphere Reserve. This place is not to be confused with the Bahia Principe Hotel, Sian Ka'an, which we visited during our stay at the sister hotel Akumal. I've done a separate video talking about the Bahia Principe hotels, including Sian Ka'an, so if you're looking for that, I'll link it at the end of this video. Sian Ka'an is a protected area on the east coast of Mexico and is home to the second largest barrier reef in the world. It's a long, thin area of land on the Caribbean coast, which means that getting from one end to the other takes a very long time. We booked this excursion through our travel operator TUI, and it was one of the more expensive trips that we did during our holiday. Having said that, it was over 12 hours from pickup to drop off. We were collected from the hotel at about 6:30 a.m. and taken to a central location where we were given some breakfast snacks, coffee, and toilets. Once the whole group had arrived, we were split into groups based on the language we spoke. We were then loaded onto this old school bus type vehicle, which was open to the elements but with netting. The drive down to the Biosphere took perhaps just over an hour, but then we had the long journey south deep into the reserve. Overall, the journey took about 3 or 3.5 hours, and the drive through the reserve itself was very uncomfortable. The road was single track and full of lumps, bumps and potholes. I said to my partner at one point that it was like being on a rough roller coaster at a theme park, and so I'd give strong caution to anyone who suffers from motion sickness to either take medication beforehand or avoid this trip altogether. It really was that bad. When we arrived, we were put into speedboats and taken around a nearby island which was home to a variety of birds. It was really cool to see them up close and hear the guide talk about how they lived there because there were no predators on the island and any water-based predators couldn't climb the trees. We then went a bit further out and managed to see a small pod of about 5 or 6 dolphins, which was my first experience seeing dolphins in real life, and it was amazing. I actually caught a video of one of them blowing water out of its blowhole. We then went further out to sea and saw some more dolphins and 2 sea turtles. Unfortunately, the turtles didn't come up very often, but I did catch one of them poking its head out of the water. After we were done watching the sea life, we were taken to another area to snorkel. I was recovering from a cold and didn't really feel like snorkeling, so I just had a little swim. We weren't there for very long, maybe 15 minutes, before then heading over to a shallower area of water for a paddle. It was a beautiful area, and it was quite nice to just be in the water but without having to swim, though maybe that's because I'm not a very strong swimmer. We were then taken to Punta Allen at the southernmost tip for lunch on the beachfront. There was a small buffet-style restaurant and the food was really good. Once we'd eaten, we walked through Punta Allen, which took about 10 minutes. The guide told us that there are only a few hundred people living in Punta Allen because it's so remote, and a lot of them are either fishermen or retired. We walked through to a small marina where we got back onto our boats and were taken back to the buses for the long drive back to the mainland. Sian Ka'an was so beautiful, but my partner and I weren't sure if we thought that the 6-hour round trip was worth it. If you were to get onto a boat further up the coast, then the journey would probably be much more comfortable than going along the road, so that is something I would recommend looking into, particularly if you get motion sickness or car sickness. Overall, it was an amazing day, and I'm glad we did it, but I would have thought twice about booking it if I'd realised just how long the travel would take. Our only visit to Cancun, other than using the airport, was on the day we travelled to Isla Contoy and Isla Mujeres. These islands are popular with visitors to Cancun and the Riviera Maya, but for very different reasons. We were picked up at about 7:30 a.m. and drove to Marina Mar Azul in Cancun. We stopped off at a nearby hotel for drinks, snacks and a toilet break before walking across to the dock. There were around 30 people on the boat and 3 guides, 1 English speaking, 1 Spanish speaking and 1 French speaking. As someone who gets seasickness, I do just want to say that I had taken medication that morning and felt absolutely fine on the journey. It wasn't too rough, which is what seems to make me poorly. We arrived at Isla Contoy after about 30 or 40 minutes on the boat, and I'm going to let the footage speak for itself. It's a protected area and we were the first boat to arrive, and so I managed to get some clips of it completely empty. It just felt like paradise. Our guide took us on a path through the islands and up on top of the hill, where we could see all over the tiny island. She told us that no one lives on the island, albeit sometimes the military visit because it's so close to Cuba that sometimes illegal immigrants use it as a base before moving along to mainland Mexico. Scientists also sometimes stay there to study the biology. We were told not to stray into the jungle area alone because there are wild animals there, including crocodiles, so bear that in mind if you're planning a visit. Whilst it was lovely to be on the island, there was nothing to do, and if I'd known, then I might have brought my book. We were there for about 2 hours, which is a long time just to swim in a small area. A lot of couples had come with various camera setups, and so I think it's a popular location for influencers, probably because it's so beautiful. We also had lunch on the island, which was good, and I particularly enjoyed the fish. Once we left Isla Contoy, we were taken to a reef where we could snorkel. The current was quite strong that day, and so the guide suggested that people only go out if they're strong swimmers. I am not a strong swimmer, so I stayed on the boat along with maybe 10 other people. The captain did moor the boat, and so I was able to get out and have a bit of a swim. But the current really was strong, and so I didn't spend too long in the sea before getting back on the boat before the tide could take me away. We were then taken across to Isla Mujeres, which in English means Island of Women. Isla Mujeres is a tourist destination, and so it felt a lot like the mainland. We docked right on the beach, and it was very, very busy, both with people and with various shops and bars. We ventured into the town and across to the coast on the opposite side of the island, which took about 15 minutes. We had about an hour's free time on the island, and a lot of it was just tourist shops selling souvenirs, which wasn't really our thing. We ended up spending the last half an hour or so just sitting on the beach or paddling in the sea. Once the free time was up, it was just a short 20-minute journey back to the mainland and then back into the bus to head back to the hotel. Seeing Isla Contoy was an incredible experience, but I would have preferred a half-day excursion there, as I wasn't really bothered about Isla Mujeres. It's nice to say I've been, but I wouldn't go back. I think there will be more to do on a visit to Cancun. If you like visiting different places, but you're happy to sit and have a drink or read a book, then this excursion would be a really good one for you. Having said that, if you like to be doing something, then I would perhaps give this excursion a miss. This is the second video that I've done covering the excursions that I did on my recent 2-week holiday to Mexico, and I will put a link here to the first video in case you're interested in that. We went to Yalku Lagoon and Acton Chem Park to swim in cenotes, and then we went to Chichen Itza, which was amazing. I have one more excursion video to come, along with reviews of the Bahia Principe resort hotels where we stayed, and if you're interested in watching those when they come out, then you can hit my face to subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!